Oh my word, what just happened at Ironman Lake Placid? Two performances out of this world, two of the best performances of the year, you'd have to say, brought two first full distance wins. It was a brutal day on the notoriously tough course that resulted in 17 DNFs on the men's side and 6 on the women's side. It's the last North American race of the Ironman Pro Series in the Adirondacks, and it's the 25th year anniversary of Lake Placid, and it really did produce a memorable show. Diving into the swim for the men's race, it wasn't an easy swim. It was a non-wetsuit swim, which clearly affected the times, but also the pros have to swim through the age groupers on the second lap, which made it pretty slow. There's an Australian swim exit that allowed us to see who was in form right away, and it was Trevor Foley, who was the main headline, only 1:45 down from the front, and he was ahead of the group that contained Lionel Sanders, who had actually been overtaken already by Lauren Brandon and Rachel Zielinskis. At this point, it seemed like this non-wetsuit was making a difference, as the guys up front were getting pretty big gap on these guys behind, especially on the second lap of the swim, where actually Trevor faded quite a bit and Lionel overtook him, but still he came out 6 minutes down from the front. Trevor was a further 30 seconds back from there, and the likes of Joe Skipper was even further back from those guys. They had all the age group swimmers to contend with as well on the second lap of the swim, and it was a tough one. And especially with Lionel's work in the swim recently and how he's chasing Kona, he would not have been happy coming out of the water 6 minutes down. But Josh Amberger, Matthew Marquardt, and Justin Reale were doing fine up the front, and then Matthew went and did one of the most impressive bike rides we've ever seen this year, similar to what he did at Ironman Texas, but even better. He put it all out there and dropped everyone. Lionel Sanders and Trevor Foley were the best of the rest, as expected, broke free of the chase pack, but entered into T2 8.5 minutes back from Matthew Marquardt, who outrode them by over 2 minutes. And at that stage, it really looked like he could have had it in the bag. This guy's a great runner, but had an injury a couple months ago, and we weren't sure how he was going to go on the marathon. But as impressive as Matthew's bike was, Trevor's run was even more impressive. In fact, one of the best things I think we've seen all year. On such a tough run course, he ran a 2:36 to take the win. Absolutely insane. I actually really hope this result does not get forgotten about, because it's one of the best Ironmans I think we've seen. He smashed the old course record from Joe Skipper by 8 minutes. And it's even more impressive considering this 25-year-old suffered a really bad crash earlier in the year, which really affected his training. It was right before 70.3 Oceanside. He didn't remember what happened until later. And on top of that, he's had many big life changes this year, including changing coaches to Wesley Johnson, and he's moved to Boulder, and to somehow pull off a 7:55 on this course and move himself into a top contender for the Pro Series is so impressive. He said he just came here for the 4th Kona spot, but truly exceeded those expectations. But Matthew Marquardt's second then was also nothing short of incredible. Coming off of that injury, which affected his running for quite a while, he still ran the same time as Lionel Sanders at 2:46. He stopped to tie his shoes on the way to doing that. And then, Lionel Sanders in third place. This is the interesting one to me. Clearly didn't come here for anything but the win, and was quite a bit off of it. The broadcast was saying he was suffering from some GI issues. He did get that Kona slot, but if we're thinking about Kona then, and how he's all in for a great result and performance at Kona, 6 minutes back out of the water, getting outbiked by a front pack swimmer like Matthew Marquardt by 2 minutes, and then running the same pace as him doesn't bode well. If he can fix the GI issues, still he has a long way to go. Can he make the difference in the next few months to compete in Kona? We'll have to wait and see. Other takeaways from the men's race: Braden Curry DNF'd again. He's the unluckiest guy in triathlon. I swear his electric shifting stopped working despite it being fully charged. And then Joe Skipper, another not so great result for him. He DNF'd on the bike. Said he's going to take some time off now, get some blood tests, and try and figure out why he's so inconsistent in racing despite feeling really good in training. But then two other last things to keep an eye out on as well. Arnaud Guillot of France, he picked up fourth here, backing up his great result at Ironman Cairns. And then Jackson Laundry's second ever full distance race, had a really good one, finishing in seventh, picking up his Kona slot. But now we can move on to the women's because, geez, this one had even more drama. Lauren and Rachel, as I said earlier, overtaking Lionel in the swim. They were flying in the water, unsurprisingly, but coming out in a time of 50:04 was super impressive because they dropped Lottie Wilms, ex-professional swimmer, who was 1:48 back from then, and they had a 5.5 minute gap on the likes of Sarah True, who's a really good swimmer herself, and 7.5 minutes to Jackie Herring and defending champion Alice Alberts. And then further back from then, Danielle Lewis, one of the favorites for this race, 2 weeks after her great result in Roth, she was 15.5 minutes back and looked like she'd already lost the race in the swim. But then onto the bike, and like Matthew Marquardt, Rachel Zielinskis really stole the show and maintained her lead, got away from Lauren Brandon coming into T2, 4.5 minutes up on Sarah True, who had a brilliant second half of the bike, and knowing her run pedigree, it looked like this was her race to win. Alice Alberts also had a great ride, 1:45 further back than True in the third. And then Lottie Wilms, for some reason, who was another favorite for this race, she was clearly having an off day. She was 8:53 back at this point, and Jackie Herring was next to her, so she had a lot of work to do as well on the run. Danielle Lewis, though, was the highlight of the bike ride, unintentionally though, because she managed to cut a corner a little bit too hot and fly off her bike, somehow managed to get right back up and onto the bike. She still had the fastest bike split overall, making up 5 minutes, still had almost 11 minutes to overcome on the run. But onto the run then, and Sarah True was the one flying into first place ahead of Rachel, who was struggling a bit on the marathon. But Danielle Lewis was still moving fastest out of anybody, but it looked like it was just going to be too much for her to overcome. Then, all of a sudden, it was very reminiscent of what happened to her at Ironman Frankfurt back in 2019, where she collapsed with just a kilometer to go. Thankfully, she was able to keep herself up and she tried to keep moving, but it was clearly a seriously bad situation, and eventually she pulled out of the race, thankfully, because it didn't look like she should continue, which meant that Danielle Lewis took the first spot and eventually finished with a 2:52 marathon there, breaking the run course record by over 5 minutes. Absolutely insane considering she raced at Challenge Rock 2 weeks ago and ran a 2:48 there. She said she knew it was a risk coming to this race as well, but she said it was one that she needed to take because she's still ironing things out for her full distance racing, and I think it's going to give her so much confidence going into the Ironman World Championships in Nice in not too long. It's the next big race for the women in the Ironman Pro Series, and it's a course that truly suits her. She'll have a deficit out of the swim, as she always does, but the bike ride there is so tough, and it's extra long because of how hard it is, which will give her a lot of time to catch up to the top women. And then we know how her run is going at the moment, so you should focus on Danielle Lewis going into that race. She also outran Jackie Herring by quite a while here, who seemed to have a tough day. She still broke 3 hours for the marathon, and then Alice Alberts took another great result here, finishing 6 minutes quicker than her time last year, picked up another podium. But then two big DNFs here, kind of like the men's race, Kylie Simpson and Lottie Wilms. Kylie was almost 30 minutes back out of the water, clearly not having her day, and Lottie Wilms, another top contender to win the Pro Series, she pulled out after the bike. But then one to watch that was so good again was Reagan Hollyoak, an age group champion who's moved up to the pro racing and is just getting better and better. She took 5th place. So right now in the Pro Series standings, it is Jackie Herring sitting prettiest with 4 races completed compared to Danielle's 5. But remember, Nice is worth that 6,000 points. And at the end of the day, it's 3 Ironmans that count at 2 70.3s. So there's still so much to play for. And then on the men's side, Trevor Foley, Jackson Laundry, Arnaud Guillot, and Matthew Marquardt are now really showing up in this Pro Series standings. And next up is Frankfurt coming up for the men. That one, I'm telling you, will be even bigger, perhaps the biggest race outside of Kona for the men this year. There are a few names you need to look out for popping up on that start list anytime now. We don't have it just yet, but Max Newman has got to get a slot for Kona. Alistair Brownlee has said he wants to race Kona, so he could pop up on there. You never know. Javier Gomez is another one we know wants a good Kona race. And then Mathis Marjorie, who's not racing London this weekend, he's been rumored to be on that start list and chasing a Kona spot. So if those guys are on it, this race could be insane. So much to stay tuned for. That one's in a few weeks. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.